Hello, great turns. Welcome back to a new video. In today's video, we will be doing this Limpopo September 2023 control test. So this covers term 3 work. How are you guys? I hope you are well. This will be out of 100 marks. So you'll be writing out of 100 marks for one and a half hour. So when you get your question paper, if you have been watching other past question papers in Zane Tutors, you will know that you will have to go through your instructions and informations, okay, before you attempt to answer any question paper to know what is required of you. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. Share with your friends and families, those who would find this information quite helpful. And yeah, if you are new, I hope you stay and subscribe to the channel, as you will be getting educational content, and Zane Tutors can be your educational companion for next year, as well as we will cover grade 11 business studies and economics. Okay, so make sure you stay tuned. So let's go through the instructions and information. Instruction and information number 1: answer 3 questions as follows in the answer book. So section A is compulsory, meaning you answer all the questions under section A, and then in section B you are given 2, you'll only answer 1, and then in section C, which is essay type question, you'll be given 2 essay type questions and you'll only be required to answer 1. Okay, so just look at the easy ones and go with that. Answer only the required number of questions. Answer in excess of the required number will not be marked. So if you're given 2 questions in section B and you're asked to answer 1, only the first one will be marked and the second one won't. Okay, if you decide I will answer everything. All right, so the teacher will not look for the ones that you got most marks. No, they will just mark the first one that they come across. So number the answers correctly. Read all questions carefully. Start each question on a new page, so meaning you will have about 3 pages to answer this question paper, or 4, because an essay type question will overlap to the next one. Answer the question in full sentences and ensure that the format, content, and context of your response comply with the requirements of the question. Use only black or blue ink. You may use non-programmable pocket calculators. Write neatly and legibly. So that's what you are required. And for this question paper, guys, we will not be doing multiple choice questions and so forth. So I will only be going to section B, where we do longer transactional questions. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed the video. So we are going straight to answering long questions. So we'll only do section B and section C in this video. I will not be doing section A. All right, so we are in question 2. We have to answer any one question from these 2 questions that you're given, which is question 2 and question 3 in section B. But for this video, I'll be doing both of them, and you would know what you had studied for more, and what you understood well in class, and you'll be able to make an informed decision based on that. So here is 2.1. Answer the following questions. So 2.1.1 says, name any 2 rights of workers at the workplace. And then when you answer this question, think, guys. Think. Sometimes whatever you're thinking might be the correct answer, even though sometimes you had forgotten about the work, or you didn't study this section of your work. But think, the rights. Everybody in the workplace, what do they have rights for? Right for everybody who works according to law. They have a right to a leave, right? Everybody earns a leave and they have a right to have a leave annually, right? So that's how you think about these things. Have a right to strike. If their demands are not heard in the workplace, they have a right to strike, okay? So legally, they're protected to go on a strike. So when you think about a question, think about it in a broader sense, okay? Do not just say, oh my gosh, I didn't read it. No, you don't have to write the exact words that are in the textbook. The teacher will know, and when they follow the memo, it shows that any other relevant answer or the wording should not be exactly like that, okay? So you have to name any two rights of workers at a workplace. That was 2.1.1, and I'm going to show you the answer, so don't worry. And 2.1.2 says briefly explain the law of demand for labor. The law of demand for labor. You see? So I was giving you the answers to 2.1.2. So those are the rights of every employee. So it does not have to be completely written in like the way it is written here. And these are the rights of people who are working, employees. So 2.1.2 say briefly explain the law of demand for labor. So when is labor demanded? The law of demand. What does the law of demand say about labor? When the higher the price of labor is, the lower the demand for such a skill. So if, let's say, for instance, just hypothetically speaking, let's say, for instance, lawyers have to be paid a high amount of money, there will be less employment for them because they require such big amounts of money to be compensated or remunerated. So when the price of labor is higher, the demand for that skill, particular skills, whether it's a doctor, a lawyer, an actuarial scientist, an accountant, or whatsoever, will be in low demand because of how high they're getting paid. But the lower the labor is, the higher the demand for the skill. So that is the demand and supply. The demand, not the supply, the demand rule. You compare demand with money, or if it's supply, you compare supply with money. Okay. Yes, how much it will cost to actually get that particular skill. So we are on 2.2. Study the graph below and answer the questions that follow. So here is the labor market graph. We have wages on your left hand side, and at the bottom we have quantity of labor. Let's look. When the wage is 500 rand, the quantity of labor is 180. Can you see that? 500 to 180. And then when the wage level is 600 rand, the quantity of labor is 100 rand. Can you see that the higher the wage level, the lower the quantity of labor? Can you see that, right? Yes. So we have point A and point B, and then the S coming down. And then it says identify the equilibrium wage rate. I want you to answer this question first before I give you answers. From the graph, what would the labor surplus be? And then briefly describe the term labor union. So let's just do this 2.1, 2.2.1 and 2.2.2. So what will the labor surplus be? And from the graph, identify the equilibrium wage rate. Yeah, so for the data response, identify the equilibrium wage is 500. They said the equilibrium wage, not the equilibrium quantity. So you have to remember that. So the equilibrium wage is 500 rand, and then the labor surplus will be 200 minus 100. So that will be 100. The highest labor quantity, the highest one minus the lowest labor quantity. So the surplus will be 100. And then it says here 2.2.3 briefly describe the term labor union. What is a labor union? It's an organization that protects and fights for the rights of employees, or any other relevant answer. The way you decide to explain what is a labor union is an organization that is formed to protect the rights of workers. So that is what a labor union is. Has everything to do with labor disputes and everything to do with employment. What would be the impact on the market if the size of the population increases? So I decided to switch to the memo like this so that the video is not too long. And we just discussed the answers. What would be the impact on the market if the size of the population increase? Let's look at the market. What is a market? A market is a place where buyers and sellers meet. So if more people are born, the population increases, how would that impact a market? A place where buyers and sellers meet. What would be the impact on the market if the size of the population increases? So that is how you answer this question. Sometimes you say economics is hard, but it's not really. Okay? You just have to think and use your head. Okay? And some of these questions, even if you didn't study them, but you just know them, but you can just remember, or you can just think deep about them, because they just involved our day-to-day activities. So the supply curve will shift to the right as the size of the labor force has increased, or there will be greater demand for labor goods and services and for labor rights. So even if you don't talk about the if you even if you don't include the supply curve, you just say there will be greater demand for labor goods and services, and there will be greater demand for labor for goods and for services. Okay, so that's what would happen. And then 2.2.5 says, how is arbitration used to solve labor dispute? Do you know what is arbitration? Well, trade unions negotiate with employers on behalf of members to improve wages, benefits such as improved pension and medical benefits, working conditions, health and safety conditions. And then trade unions work towards reducing any loss of jobs through retrenchments. That is what arbitration is. Labor disputes are solved and help members to resolve grievances, and it represents members in labor disputes and accept any irrelevant answer. So you are not just what can I say, limited, yes, to these ones that I have read out. Study the information below and answer the questions that follow. Bargaining Council, former Federation of Unions of South Africa, FEDUSA General Secretary Dennis George's dismissal is now in the hands of the CCMA. The Federation dismissed George over allegations of corruption involving his purchase of shares in controversial company IO Technologies. The company has been accused of irregularities which have been laid bare at the Public Corporation Inquiry. In the document, George says his dismissal was procedurally unfair because the presiding officer who investigated the allegations against him and found him guilty was hired through the same attorneys who conducted the probe. So he's suspecting conflict of interest. What the CCMA stands for? What does it stand for, guys? Think about it. And then 2.3.2 says, why, according to the extract, was Georgia's dismissal considered unfair? So you have to know what is the meaning of CCMA. I'm challenging you now to know what is the meaning of CCMA. Sorry. And Georgia was dismissed because Georgia's dismissal was considered unfair because the presiding officer who investigated the allegations against him and found him guilty was hired through the same attorneys who conducted the probe. Okay, and then Have you found the answer for 2.3.1? And then 2.3.3 says briefly describe the term bargaining council. So, Commission for Conciliation, Mediation, and Arbitration. So that is CCMA. So those are your answers. And then 2.3.3 briefly describe the term bargaining council. So it is the organization which facilitates the negotiation process between unified employees and employers on matters such as working conditions and wages. So it sees the negotiation between employers and employees on working condition matters. You see, so that's how you can also put it. Bargaining, it's a negotiation. We are bargaining, okay, to find the best results. Why does the labor appeal court have greater power than labor court? If your case, let's say you have taken your case to the labor court, and in the labor court you had lost the case, and then you appeal to the labor appeal court, and so the labor appeal court can give a different decision from that one that was given by the labor court. So they can actually say, no, actually the labor court was wrong, so it's the highest power. It can change the decision that was taken by the labor court. So it can hear appeals against labor court decisions. It can make final decisions which are legal and binding. And it can deal directly with matters formerly dealt with by the labor court. That's why the labor appeal courts are bigger than normal courts. What would the result of an unsuccessful mediation process be? It will be when conciliation fails, parties do not agree. At an arbitration hearing, a commissioner gives both parties an opportunity to fully state their case. The decision, called the arbitration award, is legal binding on both parties. So they are not agreeing, and then the arbitration hearer can take a decision on their behalf if they do not have any solution. So 2.4 says discuss the factors affecting demand for labor in South Africa. So what do you think affects labor, the demand for labor, people being able to being hired in South Africa? We'll say it's performance of the economy. How is it? Then people will be able to be hired. And then productivity of labor. How productive is the labor market in South Africa? Are they willing to work? Improvements in technology. Is technology replacing human ability? And the supply of other factors. As land can be a lot of things that can also affect the people being able to be hired in a country. So evaluate the influence of productivity and skills on labor. Evaluate the influence of productivity and skills on labor. If people are productive and they have skills, how will that impact the labor market in South Africa? Well, all businesses will employ people who are skilled to do the job, actually, because people are productive and skilled. So the better skilled and trained the labor will be, the labor force. Businesses will therefore look for skilled workers to employ. Businesses will also train workers to become more skilled for them to be more productive. So that is how, any other relevant answer, how you think productivity and people having skills will impact the abilities and the job market. Okay, this is question 3. 3.1.1 says, name any two objectives of Labor Relations Act. What does Labor Relations Act want to achieve? That is its objective. And why is the CCMA important? So this is question 3. Those are the two questions. So 3.1.1, it says to formulate industrial policy, To act, promote orderly and collective bargaining. The act promotes collective bargaining at sectoral level. The act promotes orderly and collective bargaining. The act promotes employee participation in decision making in the workplace. And then, why is CCMA important? They resolve dispute through conciliation and arbitration. And the CCMA publishes information on its activities and guidelines for dispute resolution. So let's look at 2.3. Study the table and answer the questions that follow. So that is the question. What does this graph depict? That is 3.2.1. And then 3.2.2 says, when did South Africa experience the highest growth? So look at it carefully. 2007, 2008, 9, 10, and 11. So the data response for 3.2.1 is say the percentage increase in a country's economic growth. You look at that, but when did South Africa's experience the highest growth? So they're talking about economic growth in the first quarter of 2007. And then briefly describe the term economic growth. What is economic growth? It is an increase in the production of economic goods and services compared from one period to the other. So an increase in production of goods. That is economic growth. When everybody is working, everything is just going well into the economy and it's growing. That is economic growth. Accept any other correct relevant answer. So you're not limited to this. Even if you can talk about everyone, the economy is in full function, everything is employed, and we're using the resources to their best abilities, maximizing growth, and so forth. So differentiate. 3.2.4 says difference between economic growth and economic development. What is the difference? Growth refers to production, while development refers to the quality of life of an individual or household. Okay, that is the difference. So economy, production, everything has to be economic growth. It has to do with increase in production, basically productivity, working, and all that. And economic development refers to quality of life. How is the quality of life? What are people able to afford? Okay, that is what. Why might an increase in alcohol consumption lead to an increase in GDP but decrease in the standard of living? Alcohol production will go high because consumption is high, but people will now be drunk and will not be able to take informed decisions. They will not go to school as required. They will not go to work as required, and they will not be able to have money to spend while they spend all the earnings on alcohol consumption. So that's why the standard of living will decrease. Standard of living has to do with how you do your quality of life. Okay. Sorry. So we have 3.3. Study the cartoon below and answer the questions that follow. It's migration. Rural-urban migration refers to the movement of people from rural areas into cities to live and work. So 3.3.1, what negative effects can immigration have on the economy? And 3.3.2 is why do people migrate to urban areas? So here is the answer. What negative effect can migrating is going from the rural areas to cities? So there can be overpopulation and lack of services or shortage for essential goods in the city. And then why do people migrate to urban areas? They may be searching for better economic opportunities, better livelihoods such as employment, education, and any other relevant answer. And then 3.3.3 says, briefly describe the concept urban migration. So it is a movement of people from rural areas to urban areas. So 3.3.4, how will the net migration influence the South African economy? Migration leads to the densely populated informal settlements. So there will be more slums because people are moving to the cities. They can't even build. So there will be more slums. And uncontrolled migration leads to service delivery problems where the demand for electricity, water supply, and other services puts a lot of pressure on the government because a lot of people than anticipated are now moving to the urban areas and living their own areas. And why is it important for the government to know the population growth rate in the country so that they can be able to plan accordingly? So the increase in population in cities increase labor, which is needed in industries, and houses must be built for the increase in population in cities. So they have to know for town planning and for budget issues as well, so that they know how many people have to be included to get medication at hospitals. So briefly discuss the Labor Court of South Africa in dispute resolution. So discuss the Labor Court of South Africa in dispute resolution. What is the role of the Labor Court of South Africa in resolving disputes? So the Labor Court grants interdict. The Labor Court awards compensation in any circumstance which are mentioned in the Labor Relations Act. The Labor Court makes orders for costs which need to be paid, and the Labor Court orders parties to comply with the Labor Relations Act. And then 3.5, how do stokvels contribute towards a better form of saving for members? How does stokvel? So stokvel are sociable members have common values and understand one another. They impose self-discipline and commitment on people, and no one wants to let their friends down when it comes to paying. And there is social prestige in belonging to a stokvel. Like, you are deemed high in society, in the black community, for joining a stokvel. So now we are in question C, section C. You're asked to construct an essay. You must have a introduction. So in an introduction, guys, grade 10s, you explain, okay, whatever that you're asked to write about, and then in the body you answer the questions. Now let's look at 4. Discuss in detail the industrial development. So in your introduction, you explain what is industrial development. Industrial development refers to a development that involves the manufacturing of industrial processes. You are done. That is your 2 mark. Or industrial development is the building and growing of industries within an economy by using new technologies which make job easier, faster, better, and leads to an increase in a business output and an increase in profit. 2 marks, you are done. Okay? Or any other thing that refers to industrial development, explaining anything in the industrial development field. Okay? And then in your body, you answer. Number 1 says discuss the industrial development in, you are discussing it in detail. So for the main part, the body, you'll say the body, you'll talk about manufacturing as industrial revolution. You will talk about it. Anything about industrial, you will talk about it there. You will also talk about transportation improvement. You talk about communication improvement. You talk about banking improvement. You talk about urbanization and migration. So you look at all the topics that are under you look at all the topics that are under industrial development and put them in your board for 26 marks. You write everything. And then part B, you are asked to, it's an additional question. They say, how was surplus production, trade, and transport development used in the evolution of markets? Surplus production, trade. So you also have to understand trade and transport development used in the evolution of markets. How a market evolutionized, improved through surplus production and trade and transport development. So that is how you answer this one. Okay. So the surplus allowed for non-agricultural activities to develop, such as manufacturing and trade. Farmers increased productivity, allowing the communities and settlements to expand, and the agricultural surpluses manufactured items brought about the start of real trade in our communities. And then you conclude. Conclusion is a fact, guys, or it's an addition, okay? Like industrial development contributes to the economic growth because of the development of expansion of industries that leads to an increase in production of goods and services and demands for goods and services. So you can even give a suggestion as a conclusion. 2 marks. And then question 5, discuss in detail the South African labor force. So you explain what is labor. you can say labor or the South African labor force. Okay, you can explain it. South Africa has a productive and industrialized economy with many characteristics associated with developing countries, including division of labor between formal and informal sectors. And then for the body, that's what you discuss in detail, the South African labor force. And then you're going to talk about age. Labor force is between people of 15 and 65. There is an Asian labor force in South Africa with a large component of unemployed youth. Then the increase in the age of working population is because people are working until they reach retirement age for financial reason. There is an Asian labor force in South Africa with large component. It's that one was repeated. Okay, and then you will also cover employment and unemployment. So South Africa has a increasingly high unemployment rate, highest among unskilled and semi-skilled workers. So agriculture provinces are the most affected. So youth unemployment continues to grow in the country. So you talk about South Africa, everything you know. Talk about geographic composition. So Gauteng has the largest population. So basically here you talk about South Africa. And then in the additional part, discuss natural growth with regard to the difference between birth and death rates of a population. So that is your additional part. And then natural growth is the difference between birth and death rates in the population. Birth and death rates of a population during a specific period of time. Overall growth rate include migration, entering and leaving the country. So that's right. And there you conclude, you give a suggestion or a fact, and that is your conclusion. Thank you very much for watching. Great tense. Until the next video.